From Good Shepherd Auditorium in Inwood NYC, welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where you meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes that make their home affectionately in this neighborhood we call Upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and this is Live and Local. It's our podcast dedicated to showcasing the musicians of Upper Manhattan. We talk with them about what they do, and best of all, listen to them perform live in one of our favorite local venues. Today, we are excited to speak with guitarist Bob Windbiel. Cutting his teeth on the Beatles, show tunes, and 60s AM radio, Bob first formed a blues duo with childhood pal Ralph Robbins when he was 12 years old. His high school band Edge played rock and roll, blues, and jazz rock fusion in the early mid-70s. Then with the electric avant-garde jazz group Outlet, he recorded 3 albums, one of which was released on the legendary alternative jazz label ESP Disc. He led and composed most of the material for the 2 indie rock bands from the mid-'80s to the early 90s called Maud Lang and Marcel Monroe. Bob's hybrid concert instrumental and vocal music has been performed by Jed Disler, Jenny Lin, and many others. And locally, Bob played guitar in the pit band for Inwood's famous Pied Piper Children's Theater for several productions with his children, Bix and Genevieve, when they were on stage. After graduating from Lehman College, he became the electric guitar teacher at the school and formed the Lehman Guitar Ensemble, for which he arranges music ranging from classical to jazz to blues to pop to rock and roll. In addition, he continues to record and occasionally perform professionally with his bands Edge and Outlet. We are thrilled to have him here today on Live and Local and are thrilled to hear him play live for you now. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Windbiel. Well, Bob, thank you so much for sharing the music. It was fantastic. It's great to see you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate being here.
Thank you, Aaron. It's great to be here, and thanks for having me on today.
Sure. So you introduce your compadre who accompanied you on bass today.
Sure. That's some people call him Al. I call him Alejandro. He's a student of mine. I met him, I believe, in 2012 or 13. He was only 18 years old at the time. A student of mine, and we've played on and off together. He plays guitar and bass today. Obviously, played bass.
Well, so great that a student of yours can continue the relationship professionally with you, and how it matures, and you can play together and still have that camaraderie.
Yes, he's more than a student. He's a good friend.
Awesome. Well, please tell us what you just played for us. The three songs you just played.
Sure. The first song we played was one called Vigilance. It's got the thing I like about that tune is that it starts with an improv, and you don't get a melody until a good minute into the tune. So that was sort of how that structure came about. I wanted to do something like that. Like, why is the melody always first? Let's have a little openness at first. And so Vigilance, the title, came about, I think, sometime during the former guy's term. And that's just seemed like a good word for that tune.
Yeah, great word.
After that, we played a song. It's a very odd melody. In fact, it's a melody that goes wherever it wants, and so I gave it the title Impertinent. The song is called Impertinent. When I taught it to Alejandro, it took us a while to pull it together because even though you see the thing on the paper, it's not a chord or a melody note you're used to going to at that moment. It jumps around on purpose. That's the idea, to be kind of a surprise at almost every turn. And then the third tune we did was a ballad that I wrote dedicated to my wife, Kimberly Jean, and it's called That Which Brings Us Close, and it's actually on a recording I did with Edge as well.
Awesome. Well, so very different, three really different pieces. And just curious, like, what is your relationship with melody? How do you incorporate in your songwriting? It seems like you pay quite attention to, is you start with the melody and then you work around it? I'm always curious about process and songwriting.
I think generally I get mostly inspired by harmony. That's where I sort of live.
Okay.
Obviously I've studied a lot about the relationship between melody and harmony. So two chords next to each other sort of tell me where to go melodically. I know there are many composers who do it differently. They come with melody first. I think a lot of the great American songbook guys like Cole Porter and Richard Rodgers, that's how they wrote.
Right.
That's rare for me. I generally, because I play an instrument that is harmonic, right? I play many notes at once. I think that has been always a starting point. Now, I play a little piano as well. I don't perform on piano, but I picked up piano for the reasons, because composers traditionally play that instrument. You got that whole orchestra there under your fingers. So guitar is the next best instrument for writing, I think, actually. The second best.
You do pretty good with the second best instrument, I'd say.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, you've had an incredible career that spans not only decades, but nearly every form of popular and perhaps less popular music. Let's start at the end, which also happens to bring us to the beginning of your career, Edge. A band you started with nearly 50 years ago, is that correct? And put out an album, your first album, in 2020. I think that's wonderful. For those who haven't heard it yet, it's a jazzy retro rock feeling album entitled "Keep Me Around." And can you tell our listeners a story about not only the recording, how it came to be, but also revisiting it with your old chums after 50 years?
Sure. Well, these guys and I have stayed in touch since I graduated in 75. The keyboard player two years later, and the drummer, I think, the year before me. So we were all pretty close in age. And, it was a great time back then. We played dances, Battle of the Bands, little parties and stuff like that. And then went our separate ways and did different things. Paul was in one of the pop bands I was in the 80s. He was in Maud Lang. And we've also done some work with some other singer-songwriters, he and I. But when Mark moved down from Maine, that's right, our drummer moved, he was in Maine for 25 years. And when he got to Connecticut, like an hour and a half from the city instead of 5 hours, he said, guys, we should play. And this was about 7-8 years ago, I guess. And we got together, and it was like putting on, an old pair of shoes. Like, oh, these are so comfortable. It was so easy. And we mixed it up with some covers, and Lee and I both have written a lot of music over the years, and we both got inspired and wrote a bunch of tunes. And then he and I got together, Lee and I, and he lives right up in Riverdale. We said, we should document this already. Okay, let's do this. And we did it in 2 sessions. It's recorded like a jazz record. Very, very little fixes and almost no overdubs at all. And 2 mix sessions. So 2 recording sessions and 2 mix sessions, and we got the album done.
That's amazing. Well, I believe we have a track here to share from the album. Here's Interstellar, performed by Edge. Great stuff, man. Fun. It sounds like you recorded it 50 years ago and this year. Which it has a timeless quality to it, I feel. And I was curious. You say it was recorded like a jazz album. Like, were you all in the room playing together the whole way through? Just so our listeners can kind of hear.
Well, I mean, the drums were in
the
were in a booth,
sectioned off, right?
Yeah. But we were we had
right
sight
together.
lines and played at the same time.
Well, it's kind of going off what you said earlier about when you compose, like going right between the instruments. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so you guys are listening to each other, complimenting each other, playing off each other, finding the harmony amongst all of the different sounds around you.
Yeah, very much so.
I love that process. How did that song come about, Interstellar? Any particular recollection?
Yes, it's what's called a contrafact, and contrafacts are when composers use another tune's harmony, and you set a new melody. And the jazz guys did it all the time. I mean, the number of contrafacts on the tune "I Got Rhythm" is probably over 1,000. Charlie Parker wrote like 10 of them. So it's a great tradition from that world. So I picked a tune called "Stella" by Starlight, by a guy named I think Ned Washington, and it's just a beautiful song. I changed the key, put it in guitar favorite key, E, and put a intro, interlude, and coda on it, and put a new melody on it, and that's how Interstellar came about.
Wow. Stellar tune. Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, in the 70s, progressing from where you were on the edge, FM rock and AM easy listening, blues, classical, jazz, it was all there on the dial to be found. It was a really great time to find inspiration from being exposed to many styles of music, like I said, and sometimes all on one station. Back in the day, you had that. You didn't have to have a Sirius XM radio where everything was so a la carte and specialized. As anyone can tell from listening to your brief bio and the music you played earlier, you have a lot of musical tastes and influences, and you played in avant-garde and like improvisational jazz bands that traveled the globe. But and being a teacher too, I find it interesting. I found a deep dig into your history that you also took guitar lessons from people as well, and you had a lesson with jazz great Pat Metheny, isn't that right?
That is right. I was fortunate to meet him. It's an interesting story. I was gonna go see George Benson. I think it was around my birthday, so it was 1976 or so, and the tickets were sold out. And my girlfriend at the time said, "Well, you know that record you got, Bright Size Life? That guy's playing in the town over from where she lived in Westport, Connecticut." And I said, "Wow, great! So let's do that instead." And we went to see Pat Metheny. He was playing with like a pickup band, and there were maybe 35 people in the club that could hold 150. And I went up to him after the set, the first set, and I said, "My name's Bob, and glad to meet you. I love the way you played." I said, "Bright Size Life that's my favorite song." And he looked at me. I'm not kidding. He said, "You know that tune?" This is before it broke for him. And so he was very friendly with me because I was an early fan, and went to see him subsequently at some other shows, and finally said, "Could you give me a lesson? I'd love to have a lesson." And I went up to his place in Boston shortly after that, and it was great. I was with him for a couple hours. And he actually played one of my songs. I'm so sad I did not have a voice memo phone handy at the time, but he played one of my songs with me, which was a great experience.
Well, you'll always have it there with you.
That's right.
You always have it.
It's out in the air. It's vibrating. It's out there somewhere.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great story. Loving it. Well, I'm sure people are saying the same thing about you, your students.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, as we progress, you played in the performance art scene in the Village in the 80s and 90s, and then in the 90s you kind of had more you formed and playing indie pop rock bands, like we mentioned before, Maud Lang and Marcel Monroe, and you used to play like, down the Village, such haunts like the Continental and CBGBs and that whole scene down there. And you guys had some college radio success too, right?
That's right. We did. We had an EP that we put out. Well, Maud Lang, not so much radio success with that, and it broke up. It broke up, and Marcel Monroe got put together a few months later. The first EP we put out was called "Love Is Not," and that got some attention, which was very nice. And we managed to get a few college gigs, fairly local, 100 miles, 150 miles from the city. And then we put out a full length called "Framed." And that the lead track on that got a lot of airplay. It's called "True to a Feeling." Kimberly Jean, who was my bass player at the time, hadn't married her yet, sings a beautiful lead on that. And then there was one more EP before the band broke up, called "Scenes from a Checkered Past." So yeah, we got some college airplay. We opened for some notable people now and then, and it was a lot of fun. It really was.
Awesome. Well, hey, the best gift of all, it brought you your wife, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just say yes, okay?
Yes.
Awesome. And do you guys kick around at the house sometimes playing tunes and just kind of like shoot the breeze,
we have
up some stuff?
We do a couple of things. One is we have a sort of in-house band with my daughter, Genevieve, and we're called the Sensitivos, the three of us. Okay. We play mostly covers, once in a while an original. And the girls sing. I don't sing very much in that group, but I play the guitar. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes Kimberly and I will just play some folk and blues around the house. We both cut our teeth on that music, so it's very familiar. Yeah.
It's wonderful. Music brings people together.
Mm-hmm.
Really awesome. Well, let's talk about your life uptown here. You returned to school later in life to finish your degree at Lehman College, which you won the John Cogliano Composition Scholarship in 2008. Congratulations for that. Did you intentionally study to teach? Was that why you went back to school, or were you just going for the great pursuit of knowledge to help your professional career? I was never clear on that.
I do think it was, to get a legitimate teaching situation going. I've always, I've given lessons since I was in high school. I was one of the good guitar players in my high school, so I would give some lessons to some of my friends. So, when you're a musician, you end up doing a lot of, Aaron, you've been an actor and a director, and you do different things to make money.
You piece it together.
Right. So I just kind of got a little tired of that.
Yeah.
And so Lehman was a good situation, and John Corigliano, is this top shelf composer, and he's mentioned at the same time as people like Phil Glass and Steve Reich. So I went there and got the degree, and shortly after, they needed an electric guitar teacher, which was perfect.
Very
for
serendipitous.
Me. Really, very much so. So that's where I met Alejandro, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you have a lot to pass on to your students, and it's great you have him as it's kind of like passing the torch in some ways too within Lehman as well. Which is right. Kind of interesting, right?
That's right. No, and it's what I love about teaching. I mean, I think this is a bonus of coming to it late in life. I mean, my experience of music is, you devote your life to music, so you have all this, the basic stuff, obviously, but then you have some really arcane things. But to be the first person to say to the name Bach or Beatles to some 18-year-old in the Bronx who's like decided, I think I'm going to be a music major. It's very exciting, because I can like kind of lead them down that path. So the guitar ensemble is one of the places where that happens. I've arranged both those Bach and Beatles for that ensemble. And it's just exciting to see them get, get turned on by like "And Your Bird Can Sing" or a Bach 2-part invention. You know, so
I could listen to Bach every day, and the Beatles actually.
I do Bach, really. I do the Beatles because there's less of it.
Yeah.
I put it away sometimes so that I can get the new thrill again.
Sure. Well, as a sidebar, but related to Uptown composing and arranging, isn't it true you composed instrumental music for the Pied Piper Pit Band there?
I did. I'm glad you mentioned that. Ray Martinez Cubero, he was this amazing guy who, similar to yourself, actually, came to the neighborhood and said, "We need a theater company. We need something going on here." And he set this thing up, and it's just been great for the neighborhood. And my kids went through that theater from 5 to, when you graduate there, basically when you graduate high school. And he had a fundraiser around 2010 or 11 or so, and he, something like a commission, asked me to write something. And I had gotten to know James Noyes and Keith Burton pretty well in the band. And so I wrote a little suite. And they're like, they're definitely this hybrid thing. When classical people hear it, those who are very, very serious about it, they'll say, like, someone actually did say, "Bob, that is not classical music."
You're like, you're right.
You're right, but it's through composed. There's no improvisation. So,
different movements throughout.
Yes, right.
Cool. Well, I hope you can make that public sometime for the rest of us to enjoy at some point, or maybe we can do another concert of it at some point.
That sounds
good.
You
never
never
know.
That sounds good.
Well, we've kind of brought us full circle to the present day and all that. Here we are, we're post-pandemic, and we're still playing music, we're still sharing, which is amazing. And so before we say goodbye, I would like for you to share, you have 2 more songs for us, right, to share with us. And what are those? Could you introduce those songs to take us out?
Yes. The first one is, it's an untitled piece, okay? So we'll just say it's untitled, written a couple...
I love that song. It's my favorite titles.
It's written a couple of years ago, and it just came up because when Alejandro and I were rehearsing, there was one that we were doing from the Edge record that it just wasn't clicking, and we both realized it. And I said, okay, let me bring in this other thing because I think this might work. It's based on a chromatic melody for you music students out there, and then the last one we did was just to give a reference point to listeners is a Bob Dylan song called "It's All Over Now, Baby Blue." It's one of the greatest artists of not just the 20th century ever. So I love the song, and so I showed it to Alejandro, and hope you enjoy that.
Is it the first time he's ever seen it or heard it by any chance?
It is. You know what? When I played it for him, and he fell in pretty quickly, he said, "I've never heard Bob Dylan do this. I've heard this tune." So he's heard cover versions of it.
Gotcha. Well, no bigger compliment than that, right? And now he's covering it.
Yeah.
Here we full circle again. Once again, Bob Windbiel. Well, Bob, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking time here today. Do you have anything coming up, gig-wise, professionally with Lehman and or yourself that we could alert people to coming up?
Well, I would just like to say that the Lehman guitar ensemble, the student guitar ensemble that I arrange music for, they do 2 performances, sometimes more, per semester. And performances, well, during COVID, obviously, it was a little difficult, but they are free to the public, and they're usually on the bill with the Lehman Jazz Band. We usually split a bill. So you can find out about that at the Lehman College website. Look at the music department there, and there will be listings for those performances. As far as my performing goes, I would just say, watch out for cocktail guitars, because that's what I do. I play a lot of music on the guitar, sometimes with Alejandro. And you can go to edgetheband.com and find out about the recording I did with the band that I met those guys in high school.
Awesome. Well, you have your marching instructions, listeners. Go out, find Bob's music, or maybe find Bob himself. Thanks again, Bob, for being here and joining us on this very special edition of Live and Local on air.
It was great to be here. Thank you, Aaron.
You betcha. So again, folks, this is Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where you meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes that make their home here in Northern Manhattan. If you have a moment, please show us some love right now by rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really does help. Many thanks to the Church of Good Shepherd here at Inwood NYC for hosting us, and to HeightsHeights.com for Uptown promotional support. You can support On Air and all of our programming by making a tax-free donation at inwoodartworks.nyc/donate. Be sure to follow us on social media at Inwood Artworks to keep up with all that we do, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, pop-up art galleries, live performances, and so much more. Inwood Artworks On Air is proud to be supported in part by public funds, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, in partnership with the City Council. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims for Inwood Artworks On Air.